Welcome to my video. This is a quick Rosy boa versus Kenyan boa video. If you are unsure which one to buy as your first snake or maybe an additional snake for your collection, I'm hoping that this video will give you some ideas on helping you make your decision. So this here, his name is Batman. He is my striped anery, Kenyan boa het albino. So if I were to breed him to a female with the same genes, the similar genes, which I do have, I may or may not breed him to her, then I would end up with snow Kenyan boa. So this is a really popular morph. Typically the Kenyan boas comes in spots, but this is a stripe, which comes to the first category I want to talk about, which is cost for these snakes. For Rosy boas, there currently are no, or very, I wouldn't say no, there are not a lot of availability in terms of morphs. There are albinos, whitewater albino, Limburg albino, the Limburg line, snow, and so forth. And they're also sold in localities of where they're from. For Rosy boas, due to the lack of availability, prices for Rosy boas will be a little bit more. And Rosy boa, depending on what you're looking for, if you have a certain particular locality you're looking for, will cost you more. So the more rare it is, the more expensive it gets. In comparison to the Kenyan boa, like Batman here, he's actually much more affordable because there's so many of them. Kenyan boas are very easy to breed. Therefore, you will find hundreds of them available in different types of morphs, different colors. There's even the paradox, which is really not so much as a morph, but paradox is just a morph that usually find the albino paradox, which I will show you maybe later. I don't know if she'll come out. I have an albino paradox Kenyan boa. It's just dots, random dots on their body. Rosy boas don't have that as far as I know. I haven't seen one sold or listed for sale. Hey, buddy. So cost-wise, kind of go hand in hand with availability. Rosy boas will be harder to find. Therefore, they will cost more. Whereas the Kenyan boa, due to the ease of breeding and numerous morphs already available in the market, will be much more affordable. So I'm going to put him in his cage. I just cleaned his cage. So put him back in here so he doesn't get stressed out. There you go. This is a 12-inch enclosure. I recommend for baby snakes. He's still very young, so I'm keeping him here a little bit longer. So cost-wise, I would say the Kenyan boa costs less, has more availability, more morphs to choose from, versus Rosy boa costs more, especially if you're looking for a particular locality or a particular designer morph. The more rare a Rosy boa is, the more expensive it gets. And enclosure-wise, they both pretty much can be housed in a similar way. Both don't need high humidity. Glass tanks would work just fine. 20-gallon long to 40-gallon breeder maximum for an adult female would be fine for both species. Yeah, they're not big snakes. These are not big snakes. And, cost-wise, they eat the same. They both have really good appetite. So you shouldn't have any issues with feeding. Kenyan boa and Rosy boa both can be difficult to start when they're hatchlings, when they're born. They're not hatchlings, they're born, sorry. When they're born, they have a tendency to eat only live after birth, or they don't eat it all for the first couple weeks due to they're still digesting their egg, the sac, and their fat. So sometimes they may not eat right after birth. And when they do, they might prefer live prey, live pinkies at the time. But otherwise, they're pretty much easy to feed. Once they get going, they're really good to eat. This guy here, Batman, he eats very well. He is very chill, very good personality. He's already in hiding. And eats very well, never had a decline, as well as my other two Kenyans and boas eats very well. My Rosy boa eats very well, so you shouldn't have any issues once they get started. And one of my Kenyan Semboas actually was eating live. When I got her, I switched her to frozen thaw at first attempt, and it worked. So these are not like ball pythons difficulty in terms of feeding. You shouldn't have any issues. It should be easy. If not, try again the next week. It should eat for you just fine. Temperature-wise, they're the same as Rosy boas. No higher than 88 degrees. And the basking spot, room temperature on the cool side is fine. Room temperature is 75 to 77. Again, low humidity for both species. Just make sure that they both are not kept in something that raises too much humidity with no airflow. The major differences between the two, and there's Batman again. Differences between the two is that the Kenyan sand boa prefers to burrow, hence their name sand boas. So you can see right here, he went right and he was burrowing. You couldn't see him, but now he just popped out his head. Because he wants to eat. This is what you should see if you have a very outgoing Kenyan sand boa who likes to eat. This is how he is. You know, I just handled him, I put him back. He was clearly scared of me, but not enough where, you know, he's still peeking his head out to see if I'm going to feed him right now. And he'll take it if I feed him. Rosy boas don't need so much substrate to burrow. They do burrow if they're insecure, but it's not necessary. Kenyan sand boas do better when you give them a little bit of substrate to burrow in. Nothing too extreme, just enough to cover them above their heads, and they'll do just fine. So I cover cost. Number 2, I already covered availability. Personality-wise, both are very easy, docile snakes. I've been bitten once by my Kenyan sand boa out of fear, so that doesn't really count. Also, one time by my Rosy boa, Pretzel, who mistook my hand as food. She was such a good eater that she started trying to eat my finger. So you would either have a strong feeding response, or a scared response when it comes to biting, just like any other snake, so that's not a big deal. Otherwise, very docile snakes, easy to handle. However, Kenyan sand boas have a reputation to be a little bit more skittish in terms of handling. Most of them don't like to be handled. You may not be surprised to find one that would start squirming and slashing around when you pick them up. I do have that with my other 2 Kenyan sand boas. Batman is not like that. Batman is actually really easy to handle. Whereas Rosy boas, most of the time, they're pretty calm on your hands. They're similar to the Rosy boas, which is their cousins, where even a wild Rosy boa would just sit on your hand and not really do much. They won't really squirm much. So that's why it's best when it comes to Kenyan sand boas not to pick them up over their heads. It is best to pick them up from the side, or the way I do it is I give them a little tap. I'll touch them a little bit on the side to let them know that I'm not food, I'm going to pick you up, I'm not predator, and usually that would calm them down pretty quick. So handling is easy, temperament is good. Kenyan sand boas just don't really prefer it, but you can make it happen. You can tame them, you can handle them just fine if you have to, or if you want to.